come on in.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Jill McBride. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. Your name?
Sue Smith.
Sue, nice to meet you. Come on, have a seat.
Thank you.
How are you doing today?
Pretty well, thank
Pretty well? Okay. May I call you Sue?
you. Absolutely.
Okay, great, Sue. Well, it's really great to see you here today. Did you have any problems finding our location? We are
No.
tucked back in a little ways, so.
I knew where the building was, so
Okay, good. How about parking? Was that all right?
that was fine, thank you.
Okay. Well, I hope you didn't have to wait very long.
No, not at all.
Okay, great. Well, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and why you're here today?
Well, I guess I'm here because I'm having trouble coping with the loss of my husband and trouble sleeping, and I don't want to take sleeping pills. And I have talked with some of my friends, and they suggested I see a professional who maybe could give me some tips about starting my new life and enjoying life once again and being able to sleep, that sort of thing. So
Okay.
I was recommended to come here, so here I am.
Okay, well, great. Well, like I said, I'm really glad that you're here. And I think there are some things that we can work on, to maybe help you with this.
Mm-hmm.
You must have some wonderful friends who referred you here, so that's
Yes, I
great.
do.
That's great.
I'm
That's
very
great.
lucky.
Well, basically what I'm going to do first is talk a little bit about how our sessions are going to go. Today's session will be a little shorter. It's just an opportunity for me to get to know you and you kind of to get to know me and, know how the sessions are going to go. And we'll talk a little bit about your family history, things like that might pertain to the therapy sessions. There is a little housekeeping we want to talk about first, and I know you signed some paperwork out in the outer office, and I have looked at your file a little bit, but today's session, like I said, will be about 30 minutes, but normally the sessions run right about 50 minutes, so it gives us time to get some things accomplished. I want you to know that everything that you say here is kept in the strictest of confidence. It's just between you and me. So I want you to feel very comfortable that you can share, your innermost personal thoughts and feelings, because that will help us, work through the issues and hopefully come out, with a good positive impact at the end. There are certain instances where I would need to break that confidentiality. That would be an instance, say, where you were suicidal and maybe you threatened to harm yourself, or you might mention that you might harm someone else, or you are aware of someone else that might be harming someone, for instance, maybe a family member who might be harming a child or something like that. In those cases, I would have to break that confidentiality.
I understand.
But other than that, everything that you say here is kept in the strictest of confidence. It's not shared with any of my co-workers or anything like that. It's just between you and me, so I want you to feel comfortable with that. Do you have any questions about that?
No, I understand.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, you did mention what you're interested in as far as an outcome with these sessions. Why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit about, have you had any previous treatment have you seen a therapist at all or been under any medication for any kind of depression or
No.
symptoms similar to that?
No, I haven't.
No? Okay. What about any other medical conditions? Are you dealing with any other medical conditions?
No.
Oh, you look very healthy. Now, you said in your paperwork, I noticed that it said you're 87. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Wow, you look great for 87. Why don't you tell me your secret? How do you do that? Just good, clean living. Is that right?
That's what it is.
Okay. Well, that's great because you look great. So
Thank
you should
you.
be very, very proud of how you look. So you haven't had any issues with any treatment previously. Why don't you tell me a little bit about any kind of mood? Are you having any kind of depressed mood? I know you mentioned the sleep issues.
Sleep, crying, a loneliness, just general depression, I think.
Okay.
Missing my husband a lot.
Certainly.
And
Now tell me again how long he's been gone.
2 years.
2 years. Okay. Now have you had this depressed mood, this sadness, as long as he's been gone, or is this something that was recurring, or
No, since he's been gone.
since he's been gone?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And now it's starting to impact your life a little more than you would like it to.
I'm tired of being awake so much at night
Certainly.
and fighting that, trying to sleep. and I just would like to be able to get on now with my life, and I'm having trouble doing that.
Okay, well, I certainly understand that, and I certainly do appreciate your loss, and I can certainly understand how that can be impacting your life. So I'm hopeful that we can work on some things here that's going to give you some relief and be able to move forward, with your life in a positive way.
I
So
would like that.
let's talk a little bit more about family history. Have you had any history of depression or anything like that in your family?
No.
No? Okay.
I can't think of anyone in my family that's gone through any type of therapy or anything like that.
Okay. Now, are you currently on any medications right
No.
now?
No,
Nothing
I'm
at
not.
all? Nothing? So you're healthy as a horse, is that right?
I think I am.
That you think you are? Do you go to see a family physician, regularly? Are you doing that?
Only when absolutely necessary. I had shingles at one point, but that was before my husband died, and things like that just required definite medication. But
Okay. So the shingles, what do you think that was applicable to? Did you have to take care of your husband as he was getting ill? Is that
he had just had open heart surgery,
okay?
and we had been through that, and he was, I think, 4 months out of open heart surgery when I got shingles, and I was in bed flat on my back for 8 weeks. That
Wow.
was very, very serious.
So what did you do with him then at that point?
Friends sort of took
Oh.
over. They brought in meals.
Okay.
They took him to the doctor and that kind of
Wow.
thing until I was up and about. So we kind of both were down at the same time.
Wow. Well, you have amazingly supportive friends, don't
I
you?
do.
You are very lucky in that respect. Not all of us have a lot of friends, so
I am
you
very
should feel
lucky.
very lucky in that respect. So you've recovered from the shingles. Now, did the doctor mention anything about that possibly being stress-induced, just since your husband was going through the open
I
heart surgery?
don't know that he mentioned that in particular, but I had known other people that had had shingles when they were going through tough, rough times. So perhaps it did. I don't know.
Okay. Have you ever had any other issues in your life where you experienced stress or anxiety?
Well, deaths.
Deaths. Okay.
I lost a brother when I was 7, and I remember that very clearly.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I was 7, he was 12. No, I'm sorry. He was 12 years older, he was 19.
Oh, okay.
And
And you were 7, is that
I
correct?
was 7.
Okay.
And we lived with my grandmother at the time in a big old farmhouse. And I remember after he died that he was embalmed at the house where we lived, and I
Wow.
saw all of that, and it was a very sad time in my life and in my family's life. And my mother, I felt, never ever really was able to completely get over his death. And
Now, what did he die from?
unknown. He just
Unknown.
became ill. He had gone swimming in the summertime, came home, didn't feel well, never was diagnosed. They didn't know what happened, and he died a week after he first became ill.
Wow.
So that was very stressful, and it's imprinted on my brain as if it happened yesterday. I can
Sure.
recall every incident of that embalmment taking place in my grandmother's house and that sort of thing. But I think, and then I now have lost 2 sisters who were 15 and 16 years older than I.
How long ago did they pass?
Pardon?
How long ago did they pass away?
That's been about 5 or 6 years ago, a year apart.
Oh, okay. Were they older or younger than you?
They were older.
Older. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
So that's all had an impact in my life, but not to the point that I was not able to function or anything like that. I think a normal family grief time and so forth. But
Sure. Well, I mean, it can be more impactful on siblings when they lose siblings, and so that can certainly be impactful. Tell me a little bit about your family. You mentioned that you all lived with your grandparents. Now, were your parents married, and did they stay together, or were
they were married, and we lived there. In my early years, I went to first grade school when I lived at my grandmother's, and then we moved into a house of our own.
Okay. Now, where did you grow up?
In Illinois,
Okay.
in southwestern Illinois, about 60 miles from St. Louis.
Oh, okay. I have
And-
family around that area, so I'm familiar with that area.
And it was a little farm town. Everything was magnificent farms as far as the eye could see.
Mm.
And I'm very Midwestern in my feelings. I'm very grateful to have grown up in the Midwest. I think the values of the Midwestern family at that time in my life were very solid
Mm-hmm.
and very much all alike. The community was very small, and my dad was a small businessman in that community.
Okay, what kind of a business did he have?
Grocery, and also he had a men's clothing store
Okay.
connected with the grocery
Oh,
store.
very nice. Kind of like a mercantile.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And we had a very comfortable living. And my two older sisters, before I even came along, had an even more comfortable living because I, unfortunately, was in the Depression era.
Okay.
When that hit,
Mm-hmm.
I was smaller than they were, and they had had the good life. And suddenly we were all sort of rock bottom with the loss of my dad's business.
Mhm.
People did not have the money to pay their bills to him.
Certainly.
So I was caught in that Great Depression, as were two brothers, one older and one younger than myself. The three of us sort of grew up together, and the girls were older. And that had a great impact on me.
Mhm.
A small town is a wonderful place to grow up, but it also has its drawbacks, particularly when there's no money,
Mm.
because you could no longer afford the comforts of life as the older girls had in my home.
Right. So tell me about where you fall in the gamut of your siblings and how what the age difference was.
Okay. I'm in the middle between the
Oh,
two
a middle
boys.
child. Okay.
Because the girls were older, they were 15 and 16 years older.
Oh, okay.
We all had the same parents, but they had two groups of children. They had three, and then my two brothers and I were the second.
Oh, so the third at the top was the brother that died. Is
Right.
that- okay.
So
What was his name?
Gil.
Gil. Okay.
And I was in between the two boys, which meant that I was always among boys. Lots of boys hung out at our house, and they had things in the backyard like tents and high jump bars and pole vaulting things
Well.
and all that kind of thing.
Sounds like you grew up a little bit of a tomboy. Then.
Kind of, I would say. So I've always been very comfortable with men
Mhm.
and boys. I like men. I like talking with men, but I also have lots of girl friends too, and,
Sure.
and did then. And I grew up in this, went to a small school, and I was a cheerleader from the time I was in 4th grade through high school,
Mhm.
and very active in my school. And I was a good student, as were both of my brothers. So in a lot of respects, I had it all and didn't have anything, I guess.
So did your sisters, since they were significantly older than you, did they leave the home,
Yes.
your parents' home when you were pretty young?
Hmm.
Okay.
And they were all set, both of them. They were only a year apart in age, and they were both set to go to college
Mhm.
when the Depression hit. And I remember going through one of my sister's belongings after she died, not too many years ago, and found all of her college recommendations. She was
Oh,
ready to go,
wow.
and so was my other sister.
Wow.
And neither of them got to go at that time. Eventually, one of them did go to college and graduate, but
Mm.
it was
It would have been a hardship for the family if they.
and
had
the
gone.
two girls helped the rest of the family.
Mm-hmm.
And we've always been a very closely knit family, very loving family, and still are to this day for those of us that are left.
Right.
And I have been very fortunate. I have a fabulous family.
So tell me about your parents and their relationship with each other and with the children.
Good.
Good.
Everything was good.
They were married. They never got divorced. They were together their entire
We were
life.
always
Okay.
together.
Okay.
And my dad was a very quiet man.
Mm-hmm.
And in those days, the woman was very much the lesser of the partnership, in that my dad ruled, and he was very fair,
Mm-hmm.
but we had to do the right thing.
Certainly. Well, that's the way it was in that era.
Mhm.
Yeah, that generation. Certainly. Yeah.
I remember, for example, on Sunday morning, on Sunday, At mealtime, we had a really nice dinner,
Mhm.
even though food was scarce during the Depression
Mhm.
because there was no money.
Right.
But if we had pork chops, Dad got the best, and then the children, and then my mother. And we'd always tease her about that because she'd end up with this little tiny pork chop, and the rest of us got the best. But
Oh, well, she sacrificed for her
she
children
did,
and her husband.
she did.
So.
But
She
that was
wanted the
that was
best
the
for you.
norm. She was very normal.
Uh-huh, now, when did your parents die? How old were you when your parents died?
I was 21 when my mother died.
Oh,
I was
wow.
a senior in college.
Oh,
and
we'll talk about education in a minute. Okay.
And she, when she became ill, she had cervical cancer, and at that time, people didn't talk about cancer. And so she didn't tell us for a long time
Mm-hmm.
the problem. And by that time, it was too late to save her, and she only lived 6 months after she went to the doctor.
Wow.
And she kept saying, I want to live long enough to see my baby girl graduate from college. And she died.
Yeah.
She died the week of final exams,
Oh.
my senior year, so she didn't get to see me graduate. And
I'm sure she saw you graduate, just not in the flesh. So.
And I always hated that she didn't get to live long enough to see me do that.
Mm. Yeah. What about your father? How long after your mother died did he live?
He died 7 years later, and he did remarry after 4 years, and to a lovely lady, and totally different than my mother, but I really liked her an awful lot, and she was very welcoming for me to come to her home, and when she was married to my dad.
Okay, let me ask you a quick question as far as relationships go. Now you were married to your husband for a significant period of time. Is
Yes.
that correct? Okay. Well, let me. What about your relationships with men when you were younger? Did you date a lot? Or
I did.
In high school and college? Okay.
I always had a date.
Okay.
I don't want to sound bragging, but I always had men in my life, friends and dates. And in college, I don't think I ever missed a weekend not having a date.
Well, you're a beautiful woman at 87, so I'm sure you were beautiful as a young woman as well, and you're very charismatic. So.
Well, that sounds like I'm bragging, and I don't mean it that way at all. I was just very fortunate.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about, did you have any significant breakups before and losses of a relationship before the loss of your husband? I mean, relationships prior to your marriage. Did you ever have any significant relationship with a man that caused you significant grief or loss?
No.
No. Okay. So you hadn't really experienced that before. Okay.
It was things like graduation.
Where you just kind of broke up, you went different
When we went
ways.
different directions,
Sure.
kind of thing, but never anything to grieve over or anything like that.
Okay. So you mentioned college.
Mm-hmm.
So your parents were able to, at some point, find a way for you to go to college.
Well, actually, my brother, who was 4 years older, stayed out of high school for, I think, a year and worked.
Mm-hmm.
And the only place that was affordable in any way to us was the state university, because the tuition was so much cheaper than a smaller private school.
Mm-hmm.
So he never looked anywhere except the University of Illinois. And he was up there 2 years, and it was time for me to go. So he was able to get a job for me in the dining room where he worked.
Oh, okay.
So both of us worked all 4 years in this dining room.
So at that point in time, there wasn't really any financial aid available to students other than maybe
I did
the
have
GI
scholarship.
Bill. You did? Okay. Now, the GI Bill, of course, was readily available at that time. Anybody in your family in the military that they would have utilized that?
My brother tried to get in the military, and he had tried every branch of the military, but he had a heart murmur, and he was never accepted.
Hmm.
And he was ridiculed a lot during the war because he wasn't serving. People didn't understand that they didn't take people who had heart problems.
Mm-hmm. Certainly.
And so he did finally join it was called the Illinois Militia, and they just served the people of Illinois in building dams and
Kind of like a
that
National Guard or something
kind of
like
thing.
that.
So he did that,
Mm-hmm.
and during the summers and so forth.
Okay. Okay.
But
Was he the one that went to college then, or?
he's the one that went to
Okay.
college.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about college. What did you major in, and did you graduate? You say you graduated?
I did graduate.
Mhm.
I had never heard of speech therapy. It was a brand new field.
Oh, okay.
And in the dining room, there were twin girls who were in speech therapy as their major.
Mm-hmm.
And they were always talking about how wonderful it was and how much fun they had. And they asked why I didn't go talk with the chairman of the department about it. So I did, and I was just taken with it. So that's what I ended up majoring in, was speech therapy.
Oh, okay.
And,
So did you get to have a career in that, actually?
yes, I did.
Okay, okay, great. Well,
Mhm.
that's great. Well, now let's shift gears a little bit and tell me a little bit about your relationship with your husband, how you met, and
I love
how
to
your
talk
marriage
about
was,
that.
and children you may have had, that type of thing. So.
This the summer that my mother died, I stayed with my sister because my father dissolved the house because he was working in another town by that time. So I had no home really to go to, and neither did my 17-year-old brother. So we stayed at my sister's house in Peoria, Illinois. And that summer I had several offers. People were desperate to get speech therapists. It was a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was all ready to go to Hartford, Connecticut for an interview when I was offered a job in southern Illinois, not too far from where I grew up, only in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
So I went down there for an interview, and my dad went with me on the bus. We took a bus down there, and he did something else while I had the interview, and I loved the man that interviewed me. He was just great, and he wanted me desperately to come there. So I agreed right then and there to take that job. So in August, I moved down to Vandalia, which is on Route 70 in Illinois. A lot of people know that town. And I was there 2 weeks, and I got a phone call from someone that worked at the school where I was doing speech therapy, where I'd gotten this job. And she said that a friend of hers who had graduated from high school with her had called her and had seen my picture in the paper, because in those days when you got a job in a small town, they put your picture in the paper, new teacher. Mm-hmm. And he asked her if I was married or engaged or anything, and she said, I don't think so. And he wanted to know if I would be willing to go out with him that Sunday afternoon. And I said, of course. So he came by, and I was living in a house with other girls. That's the way it was in those days. You had a room in a house. Mm-hmm. And so we all went to the window when he arrived and see what he looked like. And he was very cute and had very curly hair, and we were all laughing about that. So that was the beginning. We went out. We went to a little drive-in place that was popular in his town. And we danced. They had a little dance floor because that was the jitterbug area. Mm-hmm. So we were jitterbugging. And then he said, would I like to go out with him that night, because he was playing in a band. He was a drummer at a little town not far away. So I said I thought that would be fun. So I went with him to that while he performed. And during the first conversations, he said, where did you go to school, kind of thing. And I said, University of Illinois, how about you? And that's where he had gone. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, where did you live on campus? And he told me the name of the house. And I said, well, that's where my brother lived. And he said, you don't mean your George's sister? Mm-hmm. And I said, yes. And
oh, wow.
So we had an instant connection.
Very good.
And so we dated, just started right off dating each other. And about January, this was August, he started saying things like something about getting married. Oh. And I said, that was not my vocabulary. Uh-huh. I said, I want to be a career girl. I'm not interested in marriage right now. Mm-hmm. So he kept hanging on, and 5 years later, I agreed to get married.
You held out a long time, didn't you?
Well, I said, I want to have some of the things I was never able to have, and then I'll think about it. So finally, about the end of the marriage, he said, is there anything left that you have to have? I said, yes, luggage.
Oh.
All I ever had was a little suitcase.
So you got married and the rest was history.
That's
and
right.
53 years you married. That's
So
great.
we got off to a good beginning. And the other thing was we found out we had birthdays on the same day.
Oh, how interesting.
So
wow.
that's the way it all started.
Well, that's great. Well, it sounds like you've had a wonderful life. I read in the file that you have one daughter that was adopted.
Yes.
I think we may get into that a little bit later and see
Okay.
how that goes on. There's a couple other things I did want to ask you. You said you've been depressed a little bit the past couple of years since your husband died. Have you had any suicidal thoughts or thoughts of harming yourself at all? No,
not at all.
Okay, so it's not that significant then.
No.
That you're not okay. And what about your spirituality? Are you a religious person? Are you a spiritual person?
Um,
Do you have a church that you're active
how would
in?
I answer? Am I spiritual? I'm a believer,
Okay.
and I do. I'm Presbyterian, and I'm very active now in my church. And
Does that provide you a lot of support? Your church
Yes.
support system
Yes.
is okay.
I'm a person that I like almost everyone I meet.
Mm-hmm.
I really do, and at church I am able to love a lot of people. Not a lot, but quite a few people in our church that really need loving. We're a downtown church, and we get street people
Mm-hmm.
and that sort of thing, and I really love those people and feel that that's what the church is all about, is being able to love the unlovable.
Oh, well, that's great. What a great
And they seem to
mindset.
respond to me, and
because you're genuine. They know that you're not being superficial. That you're
I
actually
think so. And,
you have a certain genuineness about you, certainly.
and I do believe in God and all of that, but love is very important in my life, and that's, I think, one reason I miss my husband so much. But I do like the unlovable.
That's great. That's a great. Well, we should all aspire to that, really. I mean, especially in this day and age where there are a lot of people who are struggling and a lot of hate in this world. It's nice to meet someone like you, who is so open and positive and genuine. So, well, I've really enjoyed this opportunity to talk with you today. I've learned a lot about you. Probably haven't learned too much about me. I've been a licensed clinical social worker for about 3 years. I love my job. I really like helping other people and listening to their stories. And, I hope that we have the opportunity to meet again. I'd love to see you again and help you work on these issues. I think there are some things that we can work on, pulling positive strengths that you have, innately in you to be able to help you work through this grief. And, grief is not something that we ever get over. We don't ever get over a significant loss in our lives. But we learn to go on for the ones that we've lost and to maybe repurpose our lives, find ways of adapting. And I think that's something that we can work on with you. So I hope that you enjoyed your session today. I hope that you feel like you can, be open and honest with me. I feel like you've been very open and honest today, and I hope that you can be in the future with me, and I hope that we can work together towards finding a solution for you.
I hope so. I would just like to be happy again,
Certainly.
and I just felt that I needed some help to get me on that path. Friends try and are very wonderful, but sometimes I think you need someone outside of your circle, maybe to give you some new ideas, some new helps.
Certainly.
And I feel that you would be that person that could help me.
Great. Well, I really appreciate that, and I look forward to working with you again. And did you have any questions for me before we end?
I can't think of any. What do you think we do from here?
Well, I think if you do want to come back, since this was basically a session where I was just getting to know you and finding out some of your family history, our next session will probably start focusing on some things we want to work on, maybe some goals we want to set, some ideas, some things that we can help you with. So,
That will let me sleep again.
yes, we'll work on that, definitely. Okay. Well, it was
Thank you.
great to meet you. I'm so
Thank
glad you
you.
came in today.
Thank you very much. I
Okay.
appreciate
I
it.
hope you have no problem getting home. Okay.
Thank you.
Here,
I'll
I'll
be
walk
fine.
you out.
All right. Thank you.
Uh-huh.